All right. What's your favorite thing about camping?
Me?
Mm-hmm.
My favorite thing about camping is like roasting the marshmallows.
Yeah. What about you? What's your favorite thing about camping?
Having a fire.
Having a fire. What about you?
Me?
Yeah.
I just like to enjoy the fire and just relax.
Yeah. What's your favorite thing about going on hikes?
My favorite thing about going on hikes is taking pictures of new nature and exploring new sounds and just being with my family a bunch.
That's good. What about you? What do you like about going hiking?
Just walking.
Just walking.
That's funny.
What about you?
Wait, what about hiking?
Yeah.
Oh.
What do you like about hiking?
I like walking and stopping to get snacks.
Yeah. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Trail Connection Podcast. This episode, I wanted to focus on family, and I thought no better than to bring my dad on. So I've got Tom Garland with me today, and welcome.
Thank you for having me. I've been looking forward to it.
Yeah, so I've had a desire to bring my dad on the show for a while now. That's kind of always been in the plan, later on in the schedule, but since the schedule's kind of come to a screeching halt here with the pandemic we have going on around the world, I figured this is a good episode to focus in on family, bring him in on as a guest, and talk a little bit about what's most important. So I wanted to start off just kind of talking about how this thing's affected you. So,
Well, it's obviously different. It's everything was a lot faster paced. Things have slowed down considerably for everybody. It seems like everything now is it's just more intense. Every little move, every little decision that you make, it seems to be you have a sense of urgency to it. Because I guess we have a tendency to feel like we don't know what's around the corner, what's going to happen next. So we feel like every move that we make, it needs to count for something. And then, too, you figure, how much time do I have to accomplish this task? Do I have the time? Do I have the materials? So it definitely has messed with your psyche a little bit. But you've got to come back to ground zero and try to remember what's important in life. And so that's kind of what we're trying to focus on now. Take one day at a time. That's all we can do.
yeah. So for me, I was telling you earlier, I haven't really seen too much of a difference in my normal life other than just stores hours different and, or closing down completely. The whole social distancing thing has been a bit of a challenge. I'm blessed to have a job that is deemed as essential. And so I definitely feel that the weight of that on my shoulders, because it doesn't feel like I'm an essential piece of the economy, but I mean, when I'm there on site with my crew or skeleton crew running this place, there's a lot of pressure to keep it running and run it well. So all these people that are at home, forced to be home, have a job to come back to. And so there's a lot of weight to that. But aside from that, things are a little bit more lonely around the workplace, and it kind of feels like we're driving around town after a Thanos snap from Avengers with half the population missing. But aside from of all the away from home aspects of it, life at home really hasn't changed much for us. And there's been some real good benefits to it psychologically, I think, for me, to focus more on the time I'm home. It's not any different because it's still the same schedule, but just the quality of time. And then the things that I'm doing with my kids when I'm there or with my wife is more focused on, spending quality time and making it count. And then part of that is not necessarily because of, for fear of catching this virus and something happening. It's more so just they're stuck at home while I'm at work. Even if they wanted to leave, they couldn't. And so they're used to being home because we homeschool our kids already. So that's not a change. Can't go worship right now, but that's a little bit of a different thing. But aside from all that, I mean, it's pretty much business as usual around there. So we've just focused more on doing some fun stuff around the house. So it got me thinking about kind of where we're at right now and some things that I've been trying to do to get creative with the types of stuff that we do with them to make it a memorable experience and not a negative memorable experience to where they're miserable. So that got me thinking about this episode and talking with you about stuff we did growing up and kind of some thought process that went behind that, if there was any, or if it was just spontaneous, to plan fun outings or fun things at the house to really, make those memories lasting or build strong relationships between me and my siblings. So I know that's kind of a long way to set up the question, but is there anything specific off the top of your head that you can remember that you and Mom did to look for those opportunities? Or
Well, I think probably it'd be better to kind of go back a little bit further, if you don't mind me doing so. Maybe spend a little bit of time on how I grew up.
Okay, yeah.
Obviously, I was born in 51, so my teenage years, 8, 9, 10 teenage years, was pretty interesting growing up in a historic town. All the monuments and the historic battlefields and things like that in Virginia, Fredericksburg, Virginia. And I didn't realize it, but we were poor. I didn't know we were. But there were times, I asked for things and couldn't get them because it was financially prohibitive. But I didn't really understand all that at the time. But it was an interesting time because I could go anywhere I wanted to go. Matter of fact, when I was in first grade, I walked probably a mile and a half down. I was lived in town, but the school was in town, so I walked to school and played on the monuments and things like that. And then as I grew up, in teenage years, we lived in the same neighborhood as uncles and aunts and a lot of cousins. So we played baseball in the backyard, and we rode bikes and just about went anywhere we wanted to go. Parents were concerned. We had rules. We had, for as long as we did what we were told to do, they'd give us enough rope and we could hang ourselves if we wanted to. But as long as we did what they asked us to do, we had a lot of freedom. And so it was a fun time. Not too many worries. Of course, as a child, you don't really appreciate the worries that your parents have. So for them, it was different than it was for me as a child, because I didn't understand the stresses of trying to make a living and keeping a roof over your head and food on the table. So, but I was the baby. So all of my siblings were 10 years older and greater. So I was basically the baby at home. So I guess pretty much it was different than when I got married and Jenny and I started having children. And, to kind of set the stage for how you were raised, I had seen some things coming up as a child, not knowing how children should be raised, what was an ideal childhood, but I saw some things and witnessed some things that I thought to myself, I did not want to do or be a part of when I had children. Yeah. And so when Jenny and I were married, obviously had a spiritual background and a foundation. And I'd had some difficulties in my life. I'd made some mistakes, and I felt at that time in my life that God had given me a second chance. And I felt like when I started to have children, I wanted to make it count. And I looked at children as a piece of clay that I had the responsibility to mold. And so we were just very conscientious about raising you all with a good foundation morally, and trying to bring you up to be good citizens, someone that a young lady's dad would want you, for a husband, and vice versa. A woman would want for the sons would want for daughters, and so that was our foundation. That's what we did. But as far as us making time, I think what we started out doing is trying to look at life through your eyes, the children's eyes. What made your eyes light up? What excited you was the kinds of things that we wanted to help you to experience. And some of it was creative. We didn't have a lot of money either, but we used what we had, where we lived, and the places that we could go, the beaches or to the mountains, camping in the backyard, things of that nature. And then when you got a little bit older, where you didn't have to be your hand held all the time, we did some different things. But I don't know if that sets the stage for another question, but that kind of gets us up to.
It definitely jogs memory a little bit. I mean, there's definitely things that I remember growing up that were a lot of fun, and when I was trying to figure out kind of how I wanted this episode to flow, I was trying to think of some different questions, and the questions I was coming up with were things I had answers for, and so I figured I'd just share some of the things that I remember, and then find out if you remember it and if it was intentional or if that's just a cool byproduct of something fun we were doing. So, I was telling Mom a little bit ago, like I remember growing up. Probably the earliest memory I have of the mountains was I think we were at Grandfather Mountain. I just remember being kind of hazy up there in the Smokies and doing some hiking. But I think that's from watching some home videos that we had. I haven't seen them in many years, but I don't know if that's a real memory or if that's just like the video memory of that trip. But I do remember vividly going to Franklin, around Connie Ashley's place, up to that cabin, just walking up and down the mountainside, seeing fireflies for the first time, that kind of stuff. I remember going to some creeks and doing some wading in there with the rocks and everything, and it's just the evening time when there were fireflies were up. That's a pretty stark memory in my mind when I was young. And then I think the first hike that I remember, I think was at Smoky Mountain National Park, but I'm not positive. I just remember there being, we went it's probably a mile. It seemed like forever when I was little, but I think we were hiking up to a waterfall or a creekside or something like that. But I know we were in North Carolina, but that's like the earliest.
That's the one we never found?
No, I don't think, that one I don't think I was very big for, because Mom was asking me about that.
Yeah, I think you were being carried on that trip.
I don't remember that. I don't have as good of a memory as Josh. I don't remember stuff when I was a year and a half, 2 years old. But
I think some of his comes from us rewinding and replaying ourselves, the videos.
Yeah, but I just know that like very early on, I fell in love with the mountains because of just remembering those trails and waterfalls and rocks and totally different terrain than what I was growing up in. And so I think that's probably why it stuck with me so much, was just because it was such a stark contrast between like everyday life, seeing sand and palmettos everywhere. So
I think probably some of that was spawned by the fact that I was always an adventurer. When I was old enough to get a driver's license, what I did for recreation was fill the car up with gas and drive as far as I could drive in half a day, and then turn around and come back so I could be home by dark. Yeah. But exploring and being in Virginia, not very far from the Blue Ridge Mountains. So a lot of those trips were up into the mountains, and so I fell in love with it at a very young age, and I think I just wanted you guys to experience that same thing. And so a lot of our trips were up there.
Was it mostly driving, like driving mountain roads to
Yeah,
vistas, or
yeah, mostly driving to a vista, maybe hiking a trail. But it was just the countryside was so beautiful.
yeah,
I just always had a great appreciation for beautiful grass and sunsets and trees and streams. I just always appreciated it. So
yeah. So I've shared before, either on an Instagram post or in an earlier episode, I don't remember, but a lot of fond memories and vivid memories of camping out in the backyard. I mean, right now we're filming the first episode in the studio. I guess I'm gonna count it as the first one. I think I did one up here a couple back, but it wasn't quite set up all yet. But this is the first like sit down episode that got a lot of the decor up, and got some good sentimental things that are hanging around in here. But this is set up in my dad's place at his house and in his barn. I've been able to use this space for many years now for a side business that I had going on. It was my full-time business at one point. But just right out there, camped out between those three trees, with some fire pits and stuff like that. That's pretty fond memory, and it's inspired me to do the same thing with my kids, in our backyard. So
yeah, the beauty of living where we live is that if you turn out the lights with the trees that we have in our yard, you almost feel like you're in the woods.
yeah.
So
Except
we would
for the
always
party that's going on across the street right now. you might hear in the video or the audio.
I remember a lot of our parties. We'd go to the horse stables or the feed shops. The feed farm and feed places, and rent bales of hay.
Yeah.
And we'd stack up bales of hay and build a campfire and put them all around. Many times we'd sleep out on blankets on top of the bales of hay within the feel of the heat of the fire, and just a lot of fun times.
Yeah.
A lot of fun times.
Yeah, whenever Cale Andrews and Matt were on the episode, we were talking about hammocks and tents. He made a comment about sleeping right on the ground, and when he told me that, like, my mind immediately went back to one time that we did that, what you're talking about, and I decided I was going to sleep out right by the fire, laid right on the ground with a sleeping bag, woke up soaking wet on the bottom from the dew and covered with dew on the top. It was miserable. Yeah. And my back hurt really bad because I was just on the ground. I didn't have a sleeping pad or anything. So, but yeah, I mean, that kind of stuff is just fun because it's just right in your backyard, and for me, I never had like the whole afraid of the dark thing when it came to camping outside. Like I knew that I was safe, but when Emily and I went camping a few months ago back there at our spot, as soon as the lights went down, when the forest started coming alive and there wasn't any light out there, she got real freaked out real quick. And I can understand that. I can understand why people are really hesitant to go out and venture out camping. So the best way to start, and something that I want to try to get really ingrained in my kids, is just getting used to doing it in the backyard, because that builds your comfort, that builds your confidence, and then you can kind of go out and do some fun stuff. So
that brings to mind one of the camping trips we went to, up to a campground not too far from here. And I remember we had our tent pitched out in the middle of these open campsites, and it happened to be a site where they had bathrooms and all that, and they had the mercury vapor lights. So after dark, the place was still pretty much lit up. So if you had to get up and go to the bathroom, you could see. And I just remember we were all snuggled in the tent, sleeping on the ground in sleeping bags. And all of a sudden we hear all this rustling, and I immediately wake up, being the dad, I feel like I got to be protective of whatever might be out there. And the next thing I see are these huge shadows coming across the tent, and they look like bears. And I'm thinking to myself, I didn't know there were bears in this campground. And so I eased up and opened the tent, and when I looked out, it was just raccoons.
yeah.
And because of the angle of the light, it magnified their shadows to where they were much bigger.
Yeah.
And everybody was freaking out. And But anyway, it was just fun
you know,
stuff.
they're a species of bear, right? They're called trash pandas.
Trash
It's
pandas.
funny. There's a friend of mine that lives up in Alabama that I don't remember what the sport is, but there's a sports team that they just brought to, I think it's in Athens, and one of the local radio stations up there did one of those online polls where like you can name the team or whatever. And one of the entries was Trash Pandas, and that won the vote. So that's the legit name of the sports team up there is the Trash Pandas, Athens Trash Pandas. So anyway,
Oh boy.
so I want to bring up fishing because anybody who knows me or knows my family and knows my brother, I mean the guy's a all-star fisherman, and that's something that didn't really come from you, right? I mean, you introduced him to fishing, but like most of his skill, he kind of got on his own. I want to talk about that because I know I have some people who listen to the show that are in that kind of that predicament, and I am too with sports and things like that. There's things that I want my kids to get into, but I don't necessarily have the confidence to like, take them the whole way. But like, so how did you go about getting Josh into fishing, or getting me into fishing, without really having a whole lot of experience other than just throwing a lure in?
Well, I think he had an initial interest. And when he was old enough to go to work with me, I just made sure that whenever I went to a job site that had a pond or near a lake or something like that, I wanted us to be able to do something together that we could bond with. I didn't know how to fish. I never did it that much when I was young. Didn't do much hunting either. But I was just very conscious that I wanted to bond with him with something. And so basically, all I did was put him in an environment where he could do it. And there were many times where if it were on a job site, I'd be on a scaffold and he would cut and break everything I need so that I could be on the scaffold for like 30 minutes and he'd have nothing to do. Mm-hmm. Well, I would allow him to go, as long as I could see him, I could allow him to go down to the creek and fish or the pond or lake, wherever it was. And when I needed him, I'd call him and he'd quit and come back and do some more work. And so basically I just put him where he could fish, and I think he just fell in love with it and he just took it from there.
Gotcha.
And so it really wasn't anything that I taught him, but it circles back is that when he mastered it or got to the point where he really enjoyed it, knew what he was doing, he would invite me to take me. So that was the fringe benefit.
Yeah. That's a pretty sweet work setup.
Yeah.
I
Well,
don't know too many
he was
bosses that let you go fishing on the clock.
I was easy. He was the firstborn and you were the baby, but you have memories of us all working together. So I try to treat you all the same.
Yeah. Those are some fond memories too. A lot of I think the closeness that me and the siblings have. I mean, I'm the youngest of four, and I think there's 5 years between me and Jesse, and 7 between me and Josh. So, and me and Josh shared a room for some pretty informative years of his lifetime. But,
I'd like to forget some of those memories.
But I think that a lot of that was just the closeness of the living quarters was kind of close, but I mean, just the things like that, opportunities where we got to work together, or we traveled together, or did fun things together. So,
well, Jenny and I really didn't have a plan when we started having a family. We just started, and I guess just the course of things. 3 of you were born, boom, boom, boom. 1 year, 18 months apart. And then we felt like, well, maybe we better take a break. And then you came along, 4 or 5 years later. And that was a blessing because I had 2 boys, 2 girls, and I felt like that evened out. But it posed a problem because the 3 of them were real close.
Yeah.
And considerably older than you, a few years older. So you were the baby. And there were times when you were the aggravation. And I remember us having a talk. I remember telling you, I said, if you want to be included in what they do and don't want to be left out, then you're going to have to grow up.
Yeah.
You're going to have to start acting older.
Yeah.
And but anyway, that was big. That was big for us, is family time. Like I said, we felt that was important. We spent a lot of time around the table talking after meals. Mm-hmm. We tried to instill in each of you to appreciate each other. You weren't equal. You weren't the same. You had different talents and different abilities, but we never allowed you to belittle one another. We would always build each other up in what you were doing, and therefore we built confidence in you, and you guys would entertain us a lot. Josh was into singing, and the girls too at an earlier age, and they'd put on concerts and stuff for us, and so I think that was big for us. But what we remember the most was the times around the table. We were very interested in what you guys were doing, what you thought about things, what was important to you, and we just carried on conversations, and then we included everybody in.
Yeah.
And so I think that built self-confidence,
Yeah.
and self-esteem in each of you.
Definitely. And that kind of like brings me to the point I want to really make with this episode, is just the importance of that and this time that we have right now. It's kind of a forced isolation, but it's, for the most part, it's forced with people that you chose to live with and that you created. So, I mean, hopefully you like them. But if not, I mean, I'm sure some people are ready to get a little bit of break from some of their family members. But, I mean, I remember that too. I remember it was really special having those times around the table and just laughing for hours, and playing games and all that kind of stuff. And I see a lot of stuff on the internet right now of, everybody's kind of in jest. They're just, making jokes about, it's day one and I can't wait for teachers to go get our kids back, or, like teachers should make, $1 million a year and this is only around 3 hours in, whatever, that kind of stuff. I mean, it's funny for people that aren't used to it and all that. But I mean, like, it kind of hurts my heart whenever I see things like that, because some of that's legit. Some of those people are really they're ready for a break from their kids, and it's heartbreaking, because like this is it's unprecedented. It's a situation that is uncomfortable. A lot of people are worried about finances in the country, and things that are very uncertain. And for us, this is a time that's like I said, it's not really different than what we're used to. It's more so just focusing in on the things that are most important and like making that time count. And so I just want to encourage anybody who is listening that may be stressed or maybe like ready for this to be over so life can go back to normal. Like, just take advantage of this time that we have you don't have 50 sports games to watch, to tune into. You don't have like brand new movies coming out that you're more focused on, or you don't have all these extra distractions that we have that are just in your face all the time and just sucking up your attention. And then too, like the big one, I know that's a touchy subject because some folks are not in the predicament I am, or in the situation I'm in. They're more of a predicament with trying to figure out where their next paycheck's coming from, or where money's coming from. And so I'm sensitive to that, but like, take this opportunity to just turn off work if it's not there to be distracted, or use this time when you have some availability, in between video chats and conference calls and stuff like that, to sit there next to your kids and get involved in what they're learning, and be the one who's teaching it to them. Like that's something that's really been awesome, for Emily and I to do with our kids. And that's a choice we've made. It's something that we definitely want to do. But like, there's a lot of benefits to that when your child is receiving that information from you. And it's like, you can use whatever example is relevant to you to make it stick, and like that type of thing. And like this particular point in time can be, like I said earlier, can either be reflected as like that was the worst, however long this lasts, point of my life, or that could be some of the best months or weeks or whatever it ends up being, because of how close we got or how important those memories were. And so that's like the main point that I wanted to make today, is just like, if you can't get outside because closures or different things are not available for you to do, I know not everybody's as lucky to have property right behind you that is uninhibited, that like I can hop the fence and go for a hike today if I wanted to. But Not everybody has that because they rely on parks and public places and things like that. But if you can't get outside, to get away from it all, then just focus on making some special memories at home and make that time count and use that as your getaway as that type of thing.
Definitely, hadn't written the book on how to raise children, and I just know that every family's different. Personalities are different. I just feel blessed to have the partner in life that I do, and sharing our goals and our faith. But I recognize that people are different, circumstances are different. But I would just encourage people to connect with their children because you brought them into the world. They're a part of you. They want your love and attention. And it's not really about where you live and the amenities that you have. We're blessed. We've been blessed. You guys were raised in a very nice neighborhood. Not everybody has that. But I think that what's important is taking advantage of what opportunities that you do have.
Yeah.
And it's just, different children are going to have different memories based on the part of the country they were raised in, city life, country life. They're all going to have memories, and even the tough times are going to be memories. And I think, there are probably some differing views about how much you let your children know about the challenges that you're having as adults with your finances and things like that. Some of us have a tendency to want to protect them from that. I think to a certain degree, we need to share those things as much as they're able to comprehend and teach them that life has disappointments and you can't always do what you want to do. And I think when they recognize that life is not just fun and games and there's a serious side to it, that it helps to develop them. But I would just highly recommend that you listen to your children when they're trying to talk. I remember one specific time when I was working on the front door of my house. I was working on the door lock and I was intent on it, and Josh was wanting my attention. And I was acknowledging that I needed to give him my attention, but I needed to get that handle fixed. And so I was trying to listen to him with one ear and look at him with one eye and keep one eye on what I was doing. Right. And he recognized that. And he yanked on my leg and he says, "Daddy, look at me." And that taught me a lesson, that he wanted my undivided attention and he knew when I wasn't given to him. Yeah. And there's a time for that.
Yeah. I've unfortunately had that happen with all three of my kids, the older ones. I'm sure it will happen again with the fourth one too at some point. Hopefully not. But yeah, I mean, it's takes the wind out of your sails when that happens because it's like, wow, like yeah. I do need to look at them. And what's even more painful is like that's like a task that needs to get done. This is just me looking at my phone,
Right.
That's right. Kind of a little bit of sobering thought too. So anyway.
Well, there again is the times. The time I raised you was different. The technology didn't exist.
Right.
So I appreciate the challenge that families have today. Yeah. But if you recognize what the challenges are, that's half the solution.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that kind of the main thing that I've gained from this whole experience is just really, really relishing in the fact that I'm blessed and that like even if I was in a different situation with my employment and things were a little bit more grim, I think that I don't even want to go down that route because I can't say for sure because I have been in that position before where there's not much in the bank and I don't know where it's coming from and it's scary and it's stressful and all that, but I do know that like with the kids, we've told them kind of what is going on. I mean, they understand we can't be around people for fear of spreading sickness and all that kind of stuff. So they get that, but it doesn't change that like they're still super young and they still don't understand it. They know that like we don't want to get sick, but they don't understand that like, well, it's been a long time. Why can't we go see our friends or whatever and things like that? So I mean, we've had a lot of time at home where we've had to figure out something to entertain them, or just get them out of the house because they get stir crazy and stuff like that. They play outside a lot, but as far as like going out of our way to make sure that they're entertained 24/7 and all that, like that's just not appropriate. I mean, I think that that's setting them up for failure too. So it's just been a weird balance, like trying to figure out, is this something that's gonna scar them, or is this something that's gonna build them up to where they'll be more resilient to things later on in life? And so that's kind of the challenge that Emily and I have been working through, is just trying to make sure that we don't mess them up through all this. But I mean, they're having a blast. So some of the things that I did want to share, just to give some ideas if people are struggling with things to do. We don't have a pool at the house, so I went and I bought a real big tarp, and I threw it in the back of my pickup truck and filled it up with water. And boom, we have a pool. And so that lasted for a little bit. I'm a pretty big redneck, but that lasted for a couple hours.
We say that respectively.
Yeah. But we've done that before too, even when they were younger. But this was something, they're older. They didn't remember that, but I was at Walmart and actually trying to find an inflatable pool, which for some reason this is like that's like going like toilet paper. People are trying to buy up pools like toilet paper, and so I haven't been able to find one. I finally bought one online, but it's taken a lot longer to get here. But anyway, so I just got a tarp and I threw it in the back of my truck, and so they thought that was cool. And then when I was ready to let the water out, I just let the tailgate down, and then they thought that was cool because it was a huge waterfall. And
they'll remember those things. Yeah. They'll tell you about that when they're teenagers.
And that was a 2-for-1, because the next day I just laid it out in the yard and then put soap all over it and wet it down for a slip and slide, and boom, you got a slip and slide.
There you go.
So those are a couple things that we've done that they've talked a lot about.
The simple things, spontaneous things.
Yeah.
Scavenger hunts. You can do that indoors as well.
Yeah.
Things like that. And there was one thing that we tried to focus on too, was teachable moments. Even when you play games or whatever, is if there's a teachable moment, it could be educational. If they are excited about something and you see, okay, well, they're interested in that bug. Well, if you know a little something about that bug, you just tell them about it.
Yeah.
And so all of that is just built in. I mean, you just have to think outside the box. Just be creative.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's been some of the coolest parts of really kind of focusing in on like their development and where they're at with this whole thing. Because I like with this whole project and with my hobby that I've gotten into the last couple years, like I don't want to force anything on them, but it's worked out really well so far. It's kind of cool that they are kind of naturally interested in it. Not all of them. There's one or two that give me a hard time every now and then when we all want to go for a hike and one or two of them don't. But I think that eventually they'll get over that. When we can take long trips and do cool backpacking trips and stuff like that, especially the boys, like I think that they'll really cherish that a lot and think that's cool. But I don't want to force anything on them. So when I was asking them earlier, kind of what are some of your favorite things about, or what's your favorite thing to do outside, if their answers weren't camping or fishing or hiking or whatever, like that's cool. It's not the end of the world. It's just right now, or that moment, that's just not what they're thinking about. I mean, one of my kids, I asked what I'm trying to remember what it was. It was like, what's the first thing you want to do after everything kind of goes back to normal? He's like, I just want to go to Grammy's house. I was like, you did that today, buddy. That's just the last thing that he remembered. So it's like, that's the first thing he wants to do, when everything's all done with. So anyway.
Well, when you take them on a hike, you got to remember too that when you tell them it's just a mile for you, it's 3 miles for them.
Oh yeah. Yeah. The last one that we went on was, we went a half mile out and a half mile back, and whoever follows me on Instagram saw that video of my youngest like just dragging tail. Like that was the worst thing ever. He was pretty he was done pretty early in that. So those types of things, just trying to figure out when to push, when not to push, when to put them on your shoulders and just don't take it personally.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. So anyway, well, Um, I'm not sure exactly how long we've been talking, but that was pretty much the main thing I wanted to cover today, and I appreciate you taking the time to talk and getting some
Happy
some
to
of that
spend the
feedback.
time with you.
So
We don't do enough of this either.
no, we don't. And too, like this is a opportunity to do it. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
life's pretty crazy most of the times, but now with everything being shut down, it do this. Get with your family, get with your loved ones, and take the time to just chat and reminisce and rekindle some friendships or relationships that you haven't really had recently because of distraction or things like that. It's really good. So, um, as usual, I need to encourage everybody who's tuning in to check out the YouTube channel if you're listening, and subscribe, and check out the other episodes that we've got up. This is kind of an unprecedented one because of having to be indoors and all that. I mean, we're gonna do some more things in the studio, and this will be utilized a lot more. But typically this podcast is done in excursions out, and we do something fun, and then we come back and we talk about it. But I'm adapting. I'm trying to keep it going without without having to lose any steam or any kind of momentum. So I appreciate everybody that's taking the time to tune in. Be sure to follow me on Instagram, follow me on Facebook, YouTube, or any of your favorite podcast apps, and support the show how you can. I appreciate everybody who does take the time to do so. It's been really fun to get this thing going and see how it's developing, and hearing from you guys too. You got any comments, questions, or feedback? Send it to me. I'd love to hear it. Love to hear from you guys. And thanks again for checking it out. So we're gonna be changing up the schedule a little bit. I had some big plans for the next few months. Don't know how long this pandemic's gonna last and what availability is gonna be, but looking into doing some virtual connections with some other guests and trying to connect with some people that I wanted to do some in-person stuff with. It's just not going to work out right now, but we'll see. I'll keep you posted on what's coming up. But hope everybody out there is doing well, staying safe, and staying well. And until next time, I'm Tim Garland, and this is the Trail Connection. Okay, what's your favorite thing about the Trail Connection?
My favorite thing about the Trail Connection is that it's my daddy talking.
Yeah. What about you? What's your favorite thing about the Trail Connection?
Just talking.
Do you know what the Trail Connection is?
I don't know.